Welcome to Messy Liberation.
Let's get started.
Hello.
Howdy.
You look nice. What are you wearing?
Oh my gosh, you're the second person to tell me this. Do I look good in green? Green doesn't feel like
I
my
think
color.
you do.
But... Okay. I think it's just because I'm wearing something that actually looks like a blouse versus a t-shirt, which is a rare occasion.
I mean, the color looks good on you too, though.
No. Okay, thank you. For the folks listening and not watching, we'll move to non-visual things.
How are you?
I'm great. And you?
I'm all right.
Good. We're going to talk heavy topic today, so I feel like I don't want to be too light and happy.
Yeah. So, woke up to the news that Hayden Panettiere, I think I'm pronouncing her last name right,
I think it's Panettiere, yeah.
passed away. I think she was 36.
Just before her 37th birthday, I saw.
Yeah. So she was in some Disney movies, I think. She was in Heroes. She was in Nashville. She was
Apparently
in
she was in
Remember the Titans.
Oh, yeah. I think she was on a soap when she was a kid, maybe even I saw. I don't know. I know she started very young acting.
Yeah. So, and she was very vocal about her struggle with postpartum depression after she gave birth to her daughter, Kaya, and abuse at the hands of one of her exes and her mom, her struggles in Hollywood, addiction. A lot. So it's
it's less about us being Hayden Panettiere stans. Not that we don't care for her or anything, but it's not so much about her specifically, but more about the details surrounding her death and what it says about systems, I think, is why we were talking about it.
They haven't released cause of death yet.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I know, anyway.
I hadn't seen it yet either.
But yeah, it was just it's a tragic loss.
Yeah. If it's not released at when a 36-year-old dies, if it's not something like a car accident, right, which they would normally share, it's for somebody
it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, she's been vocal about a history of substance, at least alcohol abuse. I'm not sure about other substances. So, there's unfortunately it's probably not like natural causes.
Yeah.
Or something like a car accident.
Yeah.
So, but again, the circumstances of her death are not really what it's about, although they do relate to the fact that we live in a world where folks who have any forms of mental health issues, which she mentioned, of course, with the postpartum depression and the addiction issues, we are not equipped to help those people in this country.
Yeah. I was going through just social media, and there were obviously clips of the time that she was on Jay Shetty.
Yeah, it was very recently, apparently. I think that was only a couple months or weeks ago.
I think so. I think it was earlier this year. And she, talked about dealing with postpartum and she talked about it being like on a scale, like not everyone experiences it the same way. And so she said she didn't necessarily have like thoughts of like harming herself or harming her daughter, but she knew she wasn't okay. And when she finally asked or, told her partner at the time, that she needed help, she went to a facility and they treated her for the alcoholism, but the postpartum stuff never came up. Like they never really touched on it. And so just like that, hearing that was just like, that's what she went in there. Like that was the trigger for probably some of the alcoholism.
I think she said very clearly it was like she would drink because that then gave her the relief she was needing from this anxiety and pressure of feeling like she wasn't measuring up. She didn't know how to be a mom. She felt all this failure around feeling depressed about parenthood. And so the alcohol was like a way to numb.
Yeah. And the fact that they were just like treating the symptom rather than the root cause. She also not lost her contract, but like Neutrogena tried to fire her because she had a contract with Neutrogena.
I remember that. Oh my gosh, I had forgotten about that. That was like maybe last year or 2 years ago or something. And
I think it was a little bit longer.
It was when she came out sort of publicly talking about the postpartum depression, and I guess it was like that was not the face they wanted for Neutrogena, like a face of depression or something. I guess it's supposed to be a product that makes you feel happy, but it's a product for women largely. And for them to treat a mom in that state that way is, it's just atrocious.
It's wild. Yeah. So I think I read, they ended up just like finishing up the contract with her. But then after that, they just like didn't renew her contract and just kind of like ghosted her. because they didn't want one of their brand ambassadors or whatever talking about mental health issues. And so, and she gave up her daughter because she knew she wasn't okay. And so, she said she was dealing with the mental health issues, the substance abuse. And so her daughter was living with her dad full time.
The daughter's dad.
The daughter's dad, yeah.
Hayden's ex-partner or
yeah.
spouse.
Yeah, the child's father. And by the time she was in a place where she felt her best and able to care for her daughter, it had been so many years that they decided to she didn't want to disrupt her daughter's life, right?
Yeah.
By saying, okay, now you're leaving Europe and you're coming back to the US to live with me, because her daughter's dad is from the Ukraine. And so then she got a lot of backlash for giving up, right, her daughter, for releasing the custody or just maintaining the custody as it was, really. And so it's as a woman, you can't, if she would have, we see what happened with Britney Spears, right, who struggled with mental health, struggled with postpartum stuff, had childhood in the limelight as well. And she wanted to keep her kids close, and people were like, well, you're not really fit to do that. And she ended up under a conservatorship, right? Which we now know a lot of the gruesome details about what that consisted of after the fact. But then you have someone like Hayden who was like, well, I understand I'm not fit.
Trying to do the right thing.
Trying to do the right thing for her child, right? I'm not in the best place to handle a child right now. So I'm going to let her father raise her and then do what I can to be a part of her life.
And what I read was that she was an active part of her life. She traveled there a lot.
She traveled there a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And still people were so well, what are you doing? You gave up your daughter. You must not care. And so it's as a woman, as a person who births another living thing, it's you damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so, and I'm not a parent. I know you are. And so I just thought it would be interesting to just kind of talk about that experience.
Well, and Hayden's daughter is 11 and Hayden is 36. So, she had this child at 25.
Yeah.
And your brain is barely fully developed at 25.
Right.
And I think it's important to note also, just because I think we don't know how, but more than likely it may have been a factor in this, is that the child's daughter, I'm not sure if they were, or father, I'm not sure if they were married, but partner at least, is 14 years older than Hayden Panettiere. He is 50 and she was 36 at the time of her death, which means when she was 25, he was almost 40. He was 39 years old, right? And I don't know the circumstances of the relationship, so it's not specifically about them, but those kinds of age gaps with a woman who's so young and is going through obviously some mental health issues around everything, it's very easy if a partner wanted to, and again, I don't know him, not saying he did, but it is very easy for a partner, if they wanted to exert an awful lot of control in a scenario like that. So who knows how much that might have been at play. And also he was a boxer, so he was not a small man. He was nearly twice
her height. Huge.
She was only 5 foot tall, so she was very tiny. She was young. He was big, looming presence, also a looming age. So there's just a lot there that, and as somebody, here's what I can say from experience as somebody who has birthed a child. One, it's an experience that you can't understand unless you go through it. And I know that because I used to have a lot of thoughts about parenting and about childbirth and all kinds of things before I did it, thinking that I understood to some degree. I was a woman, I had a uterus, I could get pregnant, blah, blah, blah. It is an experience unlike anything else. And that's not to say it's the best experience or that makes it something, so precious that it's unlike anything else, but it is a unique experience in that when else do we have another human that we create and then grow inside of our bodies for that long? It is honestly, it's one of those things you can almost not wrap your head around, the universe, right? Just this idea of I could create life inside my body. I could grow that life from just a clump of cells or a single egg into something that can then survive on its own and then become its own, fully cognizant, aware, it's just the mind boggles, right? And then to go through that and to have, it's an intimacy that you cannot experience in any other way. That is not in any way to say that parents who don't birth their children don't love their children the same way. I absolutely don't believe that. I think that you can love a child that you didn't birth. I think you can love someone else's child. I think all of these things are true. I think there is, however, an intimacy that you just don't
through the birthing experience. Yeah.
Does it make it better? That's right. So I'm not here trying to create a hierarchy of parenting or of experiences, but only to say there is an intimacy that is unlike any other relationship two people can have. Because I can have the most intimate relationship with someone, but I will never have created them in my body.
Yeah.
I will never have shared blood with them, food with everything with them over that course of time, right? So it is this deeply intimate experience. And then this child comes and you feel woefully unprepared, woefully unsupported, even if you have an amazing support network. Even if you have done all the education classes. I'm a deeply privileged person. I was able to go to education class, the parenting pre-birth classes. I have a partner who was very supportive, very involved. I have the luxury of having had my parents, so baby grandparents, being very involved. And still, you cannot be prepared for what it is like to be a parent. I don't care what books you've read. I don't care what you've done. Suddenly they give you this little human and say, keep it alive. It is terrifying. It is terrifying. Yeah. And it's not just a little human. It's a little human who you love in a way you never knew you could love a person. And again, that experience comes for all parents. So that is not unique. But there's also the experience of you've just ripped this human out from my body. Now all the attention goes to that little human as it should in many ways, right? We need to care for the little human, keep it alive. And yet my body has just gone through the greatest trauma it's ever experienced. Yeah. And likely ever really will experience. Birthing is a traumatic experience, no matter how you do it, how supported you are. It's traumatic on your body. In my case, because I had a C-section, I had a cut through all the layers of my muscle, skin, fat, everything down into my body and a sizable scar that will never go away, right? Yeah. And pain, confusion, like you're on drugs. It's just, I share all this, it's a lot, right? It's a lot. And then you're expected to, after for some people, a day or two in the hospital. If you have a C-section,
to just go home.
Go home.
Yeah.
You're tired. You can't sleep. Luckily, I had a partner. Many people have to do this alone. They're now taking this child home. No support, no sleep. Their bodies are the most traumatized they've ever been. Your hormone levels are all over the place. They're having to completely readjust. And that, especially if you're breastfeeding, but even if you're not, takes months to even years for your body to begin to get back to its normal state of hormonal change or hormonal levels. All of that. And you're left just to figure it out. And then with the messaging that you see when you go to the store and you look at the grocery aisle and the magazine's talking about get your baby body, get rid of the baby bump, right? Bounce back. You get no time off of work. You're expected to be back, to have everything figured out, to leave this little human and trust it to people you don't even know. Yeah. How every person doesn't go through that. Honestly, on both sides, whether you gave birth or not, whether you had the baby from your body or you were adopted or a surrogate or a million other ways that you could become a parent, how everyone doesn't struggle is a miracle, right? For anyone to not struggle through that is a miracle. For it not to potentially move into depression is also a miracle. But again, most especially for those who birth, because your hormone levels are so out of control. Yeah. That it's not something it's not just a sadness. It is a hormonal imbalance. Yeah. That all these things are, going on top of. And I think that we don't offer enough understanding, which is very evident because we don't have guaranteed or enforced leave, right? You could be expected to be, if you work minimum wage, you could be expected to be back to work the next day. Yeah. Right? Or you're taking time off that's unpaid. If you have an employer nice enough to even give you that. And even if you have the very best job, the best leave I hear of in America is 12 weeks. And that's hard to find.
That's hard to get. Yeah.
Very hard. It used to be more of a norm. What's amazing is America has become less supportive for women in the workplace as more women are in the workplace. Amazing, right? So it's the most you get is 3 months. And I am telling you at 12 weeks, most especially if you're breastfeeding, but even if you're not, your hormone levels, if you gave birth, are not back to normal. They're not. It takes much longer than that. And so, and then add on to all of that, the fear, because I had postpartum anxiety. I don't know if that's technically depression or not, but so I wasn't diagnosed with postpartum depression, but postpartum anxiety, where I was freaked out all the time. I was so worried about my kid to an unhealthy degree. And that's not an abnormal thing to have happen. And because of that, I was terrified, not only that my child could be harmed, die, whatever, that I might be responsible for him not being there. I was terrified he would somehow not be with me anymore. And that is not a normal. I think every new parent, and again, probably most especially those whose hormones are out of whack, get very concerned about their child being taken from them. And again, when we see the postpartum rates, they're higher among folks who are Black, Latina, not white folks. And I think a good part of that is because the reality bears out. They're more likely to lose their children. The system will take their children, right? More than white folks who will suddenly, there's more support systems there if they report it. So it goes so wildly underreported. I didn't want to talk to my doctor about it. All you have is a 6-week follow-up where you have to check a little piece of paper that says, are you experiencing these things? That's it. That's the proof that they get on whether you have postpartum. There's no visit with a psychologist or therapist or psychiatrist or anyone. And honestly, it happens mostly at your pediatrician's office. They're not equipped to handle it. They're not your doctor.
Yeah, they're there for the child.
And even your gynecologist who you have a follow-up with, they're not mental health professionals. So they basically have you check a few boxes. Maybe they'll ask you a question or two. It's easy enough to lie. It's easy enough to not tell the truth. And I think that that's why it goes so wildly underreported, because no one wants to speak the truth because they're terrified of having their child taken from them. If you say, I'm overwhelmed by this, I don't know if I can do it, I'm scared of what might happen to my kid. Even if you say, I'm scared I might hurt my kid, which is a reality when you are so tired that you can't function. But if you say that, what happens? Do you take my kid? Especially if I'm single?
Yeah.
Especially if I'm a part of a community where there's a track record of extra policing and children being taken simply because we don't believe Black women or we don't trust Black women. So how everyone doesn't experience this. And it's one of those things we don't talk about for those reasons. There's all the shame around that because women are made to believe they're supposed to immediately love their children. They're supposed to immediately know how to care for their children. They're supposed to immediately have their bodies back. They're supposed to immediately be able to be back at work and smiling and acting normal. Like the pressure that we put on people, they don't want to talk about it. Like we don't want to be the one who's like, actually, it was really fucking hard. And that's the gift I tried to give people is I always try to say like, it's fucking hard. And I didn't love my child the second I saw him. It took a little bit. It took, it wasn't long, but I had to hold him and stuff first. And then I was like, oh, but I remember that feeling of, oh my God, I don't feel anything yet. I'm a horrible mom. Can I even be a mom? Like, what am I going to do here if I don't even love this kid? Like, how can this be? Because I didn't have all those deep feelings for this thing inside my body. I was mostly just like, there's an alien in my body that's ruining it.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's just so much there. And the biggest problem is there is no support network. There's no structural system to make sure that we avoid these issues or that we help people through the issues. You're not going to get rid of postpartum depression, but can we learn to help people through it instead of shame them or silence them?
Yeah. I think also like socially, there's the pregnancy part of having a child is like really romanticized, right? Like there's the shopping and the baby showers and the excitement and setting up the nursery, right? And the announcement and the gender reveal if you subscribe or ascribe to those things, right? But then afterwards it's like, okay, then what, right? And so if there aren't enough social support structures, as you said, then it's like, okay, well, now the fun part is over and now the hard part begins and you're kind of on your own. And there's also a lack of just research on women's bodies and on birthing bodies and what happens to them afterwards and how to best support them. And so because of the lack of research, like healthcare providers are just
so
not equipped. They don't know how to handle it, right? They don't know necessarily how to deal with that unless they have like personal experience with it. And then they have, that level of knowledge about it. But even then it's like personal experience can only take you so far because again, everyone can experience it so differently based on so many different factors, right? Based on your own body, based on your social support system, based on your race, your gender, your class, your geography, right? There's so like who your partner is, all of their identity markers, right? And I think, as I was like just researching like Hayden's story, like growing up with an abusive mom and then having an abusive partner before she was partnered with Vlad and had her daughter, like that's a lot of trauma to undergo. And so already like trauma on a young brain already messes you up, right? There's already a lot of stuff to work through. And I can't imagine like piling on having a child on top of that. And I'm not saying that she did or didn't make the right choice. I think that's a personal decision everyone has to make. But I know like for me personally, like I just know that I just still have so much work to do before I feel like I could be fit to be anyone's parent. And for that reason, like, I have chosen to be child free because I'm just like, I don't want to have to like put myself in that position, but also bring another life into this world and make that life harder for, for someone that I'm supposed to protect.
Right. And
And that I'm supposed
obviously
to like care for.
acknowledging that not everyone gets pregnant or has a child by choice.
By
Not
choice,
everyone.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
even
That's
if
a
it is
privilege in and of itself.
absolutely, right? The privilege to be able to afford birth control, or in your case, the privilege of being a lesbian or with a woman, so you don't, you're not a lesbian, but being with a woman so you don't have to worry about that in the first place. But obviously in your case, it takes efforting it would take efforting for you two to have a child, where for some people that's not the case. And there's all sorts of reasons why people get pregnant. And sometimes even when you really want, you think you're ready. The thing is too, you don't know, because you
don't
can't
know because
know
you've
until
never
you do
been
it.
through it before.
And because, like you said, it's so romanticized. And I see young girls doing this all the time, rushing into, and I feel like there's some similarities here with marriage. Obviously, it's different in that I don't think that, I mean, they're both big things. They're both monumental things that we romanticize. We romanticize the wedding, the engagement and the wedding and the pictures and the ceremony and the blah, blah, blah. And then people get hit with the hard reality of, and now it's marriage, and marriage is hard fucking work. And marriage isn't always fun, and it isn't always easy. And sometimes you want to like freaking kill your partner or like run away or whatever. Like, it's not an easy thing. The difference being divorce is an option. Thankfully now that has not always been the case. It is an option. There is a way to exit a marriage without, a child of a lifelong endeavor. There's no
you can't,
there are some ways to exit that, but it's not easy, right? Like once you have the kid and you're past a certain age, there's no more like, I'm going to give the baby up or whatever. So anyway, but I do think it's similar in that we romanticize things and we make it seem like all we get focused on is the fun part. And we don't talk nearly enough about the hard parts of things in life. And just like marriage is hard and you don't hear that a lot. And so then I think what happens also, there's a lot of shame there. If your marriage is struggling or if you're challenged by marriage, it's like, it's supposed to be so great. And maybe, what's wrong with me that I can't just make this work? And why isn't it always fun? And because we see we see these depictions of marriage where it's like, you complete me, you're my bestie, we just love each other all the time, everything's so great and romantic. And it's like, that's not the truth of what marriage looks like. Marriage looks like fighting. Marriage looks like getting really angry with each other. It looks like crying together. It looks like struggling together financially or other ways. Like marriage isn't just always fun and roses. It's hard work. And parenting is the same way, where it's not just a cute little baby that you get to put in little outfits and like, aren't they adorable? It's not sleeping. It's them being sick and you freaking out because you don't know how to take care of them. It's them hurting themselves and you feeling their pain intensely. It's them making decisions you wish they wouldn't and not being able to fix it for them. Like there's just so much that we don't talk about, and we do ourselves such a disservice in that case.
Yeah. How do you think like community has like helped you and your parenthood?
I don't know how my husband and I talk about this all the time, because we see parents who have multiple children. I just saw a woman online who's having her 12th children, and I think five of them were twins. She had like 5 sets. She's on her 5th set of twins.
Are they like Mormon or like Catholic?
Probably. She had some shit about Christ. I don't know how it showed up in my feed on Threads, but I just was like, how do people have more than one kid in this economy? But also just like the challenge wise. I mean, we see our friends that have multiple kids and they make it work. And I think that's the answer, is often you just make it work, but it's also really hard. And
but here's the thing, like there's a difference between like making it work and like thriving.
Well,
and
exactly.
I think people don't like conflate those two things sometimes. I don't think everybody don't understand the difference.
I don't think everybody wants to thrive or understand or thinks about thriving as the goal. Like I think so many people are wired to just see survival as their goal because it's what they've experienced. They don't know that there's something else or that that's possible.
Yeah.
Because I think so many of us come from experiences of our parents, certainly my mom's parents, right? Like going back a couple generations, the Depression generation, it was like that is a survival generation.
Yeah.
And I think so many of them raised those baby boomer kids to, as much as they wanted to challenge a lot of norms, I think in many ways, many of them never really left that survival mentality because they experienced it so closely. And so then I think like Gen X and millennials are also like trying to, I think are challenging it more, but some still like that stuff lives in us, right? So
it does. I
think there's many people who just think that way, but I couldn't do it without support. My mom was the one who, my mom and his parents, like the years before a kid starts school, childcare is ungodly expensive. And I don't think people understand. So many people have kids. And again, There's many people who are having kids for reasons that are not like they were just like, oh, this will be fun and easy. So I acknowledge that. But I think many people are hit by the hard reality of the expense of a child as soon as you hit the childcare thing, which in America, because we don't have any structural systems, is immediately. And it can be thousands a month, tens of thousands a year to have somebody reliable care for your child and keep them alive. And think about that. Like, think about being forced with the decision. I was lucky. I had parents, my mom and his parents, who were able to step in and provide some care, not full time, but it helped enough that I was able to get some work done, make some income, and still feel good with my kid being safe and all of that.
Yeah.
But imagine that decision parents have to make of going and seeing. I see some of the options that are out there. I've been in some of them in my own when I was a child. There are some god awful childcare facilities, god awful, that you wouldn't want to leave your kid in. And yet you don't have a choice.
You have no choice. Yeah.
No. And just like everything else in America, just like our school system and everything else, it can vary wildly based on your ability to pay, meaning based on your class. People who have more money, their kids get a much better childcare situation than the ones who don't, where it can be really awful. That's a terrible thing. And so, of course, I mean, there's another piece where you go back to class, because I sent you some stats too that said the rates were higher among people. So I'm trying to find this. Here it is. Mothers age under 24. Hayden was 25. Those living in rural areas are at a 21% higher risk of suffering from postpartum depression. And then individuals with lower educational attainment also, which often has to do with class as well. So like classes and race are a big part of this. And that often are also those people who are having to make those horrible choices around what kind of childcare they're going to get. So if you know you are 4 weeks, 3 weeks postpartum, you now have to get back to work because you got to pay to live. You got to put your kid into childcare. It's a bad situation that's only going to exacerbate all of those feelings you're already having.
Yeah.
And I know Hayden mentioned too, I wanted to come back to this too. She said something in one of the things you sent me about how she was experiencing this feeling of like she had everything. She had, quote unquote had it all. You know, she was famous. She was okay financially, all the things. And yet she wasn't happy. And that only made the happiness the unhappiness heavier. Yeah. And I can really relate to that too, having been at a place where I had this great on paper life and wasn't happy. And there's a lot of isolation and loneliness in that. So even if you don't like, you know, she's white, she's rich, she's not meeting a lot of the criteria that often exacerbate postpartum, but it also can affect anyone. Didn't somebody else that was famous talked about their postpartum? I feel like it might have been Halle Berry, but that might be because she's talking about perimenopause, and that's why I'm thinking of her. But a few other people have talked about it. Yeah. But it's not something I think that people really talk about.
Yeah. And I think with the childcare thing, like, I don't think, because I don't want people listening to like also misunderstand. Like, I think childcare should be expensive. Like, I think people who take care of other people's children,
but it should be subsidized.
Well. Like, but that burden should not fall on the parent. Like,
correct. It should be subsidized and it should be equal. This is the case, right? Like, I don't think no child chooses to be born. No child made the choice to be born into poverty or whatever the thing is. And so people will be like, oh, well, that's the parent. Sure. I don't agree with that. But if you want to go into the parents deserve less because they, whatever your bullshit beliefs are, but it's never the child. No baby said, ooh, I want to be born into poverty. Yeah. And they shouldn't be penalized for that. Children should have the same start to life.
Yeah.
Right? This is where America falls down big time, where we fall down big time.
So hard.
Because in Europe, a lot of European and Asian nations, I sent this to you too, that they fund universal at-home visits by midwives or specialized nurses to screen for postpartum depression. We have nothing like that other than, like I said, a little checkbox paper thing. Yeah. Bullshit. And then obviously they also have paid family leave, many of them for a year or more, right? Many of them have universal pre-K to keep kids, give them a good start. These are massive differences from what we have. And then what we have is even the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries, just the last 2 days, said he doesn't believe in universal health care. He doesn't think we should have universal health care. And he's supposed to be representing the force for change. America's really broken. And these examples of there's no reason Hayden Panettiere should be dead that we know of. Again, we don't know what it was, but I just don't believe my brother should have been dead from a drug overdose while waiting for a bed. He was waiting to get care and died. That stuff shouldn't happen. A 36-year-old woman shouldn't be faced with these decisions she's having to make all alone without support. This is how people look at that and think, yeah, that's okay. That's good.
It's mind-blowing. It really is mind-blowing.
Doesn't it hurt your head? Because you just, like, I try really hard. Like, even if I try to get into their mindset, I'm like, I don't know how you get into a mind frame to say, yeah, that sounds about right to me.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, for me, and I'm speaking here having come out of the cult of evangelicalism, right? And I think when I was in that bubble, when I was in that space, everything gets judged as a moral success or a moral failure. And so if it becomes a moral failure, then it becomes a deserved outcome.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think that allows people to disengage with their humanity in a way that makes it okay to see someone else as less deserving of dignity and of their own humanity and of empathy, right? And so, I mean, there was a whole campaign just a few years ago about empathy being a bad thing, right? From like the MAGA conservative faction, right? It's like, well, we don't want to empathize. Empathy is a bad word. Empathy is a bad thing because then you feel sorry for these people. And if you feel sorry, it's a slippery slope. And then you want to give them their rights back, you know? And it's like, when did that become the line? And the reality is, that line has been pushing, right? Like it wasn't always there. It begins at deciding that someone's life is a result of what you see as a moral failure, right? How you measure your own life.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think ultimately the answer is when did it was the day America, quote unquote, the United States was founded, or people, they landed on Plymouth Rock, because it's these Christian nationalists who came here. And I think we like to believe this story around they came here because they wanted more religious freedom. And I think the truth is they weren't able to have the religious freedom they sought.
They wanted,
It wasn't about them wanting religious freedom for other people. They wanted to be able to do exactly what this is. They wanted this puritanical way of living and believing. And because that wasn't something that was allowed, they came here and framed it as religious freedom. But the truth is, it was never about freedom for other religions. It was about freedom for their puritanical views. And it's exactly what it is. And it makes me sad because you're exactly right. That white Christian nationalist thing is all about moralizing, and in that being able to create these hierarchies that we talk about all the time, and being able to support that in a way. Now, we know that most of the people who are actually the puppet masters, the ones who are at the highest levels of this, they don't believe any of the morality piece of it. They just want to retain power. And how they do that is by convincing other people that that's a moral decision on their part to maintain these systems that don't benefit them, right? Or benefit them slightly more than the people they don't benefit.
Yeah.
And so, exactly. And the part that makes me so angry is, listen, I'm not a Christian. I never really have been, but I have enough understanding growing up in a de facto Christian nation that I know Jesus, what I know of Jesus and the people who spout on about Jesus, he would be disgusted if he were a human and alive, and were he real, I don't know. But what I know of him, he would not say, yes, please use your virtue as a way to treat others badly, to justify your disgusting treatment of other humans. And the fact that somehow that gets warped and then like accepted is baffling to me. But it is what it is.
I mean, that was I think the turning point for me, like when I did go back to school and I started to like do a deeper dive on like the history of just the world, like just it was literally sitting in a fucking history class talking about the Crusades. And I was like, wait, this is not how I remember learning about the Crusades growing up, like in elementary school and high school, right? Because in college, you do a deeper dive. And then I think in that moment, I was like, oh, this is not a religion I want to associate myself with, right? Because it's this idea of spreading the gospel, or this idea of just being loyal and faithful to a religion that is okay with this kind of behavior is not okay with me. And I think What was I going to say? Yeah, just it's wild. And the mental gymnastics that it takes for people to hold on to their belief system at a time like this during these like kinds of circumstances. And I get it because again, like I somehow I understand the experience, right? Because I was there, and so I understand that. Looking back, I understand that at some point I myself was doing those mental gymnastics. I myself was like the one doubling down and like just being like, no, but this is what it says. This is what I believe, right? And I think when you have like a all powerful, omnipotent being that you can say, that you can fall back on, like any argument doesn't stand up to that, right? Because you can say, well, God said, well, God said, well, God said. And it's like, how do you argue against that?
It's a great question. I wish I knew more of the answers. I will say, I listen to a lot of, because I'm a bit of an Anglophile, and if I had my choice, I'd live in England. I just feel like I don't know, it speaks to me. The humor there, the mood, the attitude. Anyway, so I listen to a lot of British news shows and British talk shows and things like that. And I will say one thing I've been noticing lately is that the British news shows have been having more conversations about what they're noticing with American politics and this sort of backlash that's bubbling, right? And for a long time, the Democratic establishment has been trying to say, no, it's these fringe folks on the left, and they're trying to create drama inside the left, and like these are just fringe folks. They're like that people will call them the blue MAGA, whatever. You know, these more progressive socialist kind of folks. I'm part of the blue MAGA, apparently, this like leftist society, and I'm sure you are as well. And because I don't identify as a Democrat, I haven't for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But many people, like we're seeing with Mamdani, with some of the elections in Michigan where there were some Democratic socialists who won, there is this like, and of course, you know, it's early in this thing, but you can feel there is at least some amount of groundswell support for real meaningful change. And the British folks have been sort of commenting and noticing of this and saying things like, but can America ever be socialist, right? And you know, they're living in a more, like Europe is largely more of a democratic socialist sort of system throughout most of Europe. And they're looking at us going like, is that something that could work here? And it's very interesting hearing their perspectives on like, that is not how we were founded. It is not what we've ever been about. It's what we've fought for the longest time. And I think for a long time, they've been like, there's just no way. And in the last few weeks, there's been this like, could there be? Could it happen? Yeah. Could this be that there's been enough that people are saying we need not just some change, but serious fucking change? Like we need better support systems. And I think they're starting to notice like maybe. And I've always found it interesting because I find British folks are really well versed in colonialism and the colonial experiment, and because, you know, they're one of the biggest offenders, right? And I think they learn a lot about that there because there's a lot of commentary, even by like comedians and stuff. They're very aware. They're less aware I've noticed around issues around slavery and some of that history. I feel like that is where I think Americans do a better job on the whole. Progressive Americans have a deeper understanding, a better understanding of slavery, it's the history and how that affects systems today. Whereas I get the British seem to have this better understanding around colonialism, that history and how it affects systems, and not necessarily both. So it's very interesting. But because of that, I feel like they do kind of understand how we were founded. I think they learn a lot about that. And just this, like, for them to be noticing, maybe, like, it gives me this little glimmer of hope because, you know, what I would like to leave this conversation with is just, what do we want to see, right? Going back to what I've been challenged by in the past by people. We have got to develop real systems of support in this country for all of the phases of life that most of us experience. We do a shit job around death and dying. We do a shit job around birth and, you know, postpartum. We do a shit job around education and care and health. We do a real shit job around mental health. I would like to see us have systems that are subsidized because we collectively say these things matter and the outcomes of those ripple out to society, right? These are not isolated incidents. They have a ripple effect that harms us as a culture, as a society. And because of that, we all want to see our money going towards subsidizing things that allow everyone to have these basic needs met. Before that happens, though, what I would love to offer people is when someone gives birth, don't just get them the cute onesie and then hightail it out of there. Show up a month later, 2 months later with meals. right?
With meals, do the laundry, do the dishes,
send somebody over
feed
to
the baby,
give them a house to clean their house. Don't say, I'm here if you need me. Say, I'm going to come over, or maybe just say, when can I come over? Because I'm going to do your laundry. And if they say no, say yes, just tell me what day I will be there, right? Like tell people specifically what you want to do to support, because people feel very bad about asking. We are conditioned not to.
It's just,
But just know that your responsibility as part of the society in which you live is not just to do the sweet, like, yay, baby, and show up at the shower, but it's to like say, how do I help you in this year ahead? And I will tell you, at least a year. And for many moms, I would say that postpartum season goes on. They call it the third trimester, and it's more than a year, right? In my case, I didn't feel back to normal for 4 years. 4 years before I really felt like, okay. Because, and I breastfed for like over a year. And so my hormones, as long as you're breastfeeding, your hormones are not back to normal yet, right? So if you're doing that, then it's even longer. So just think about how can you support people in these experiences. And by the way, same for if someone dies. Don't just go to the funeral and then walk away. How can I show up for you 3 months later when you're still having a really hard time, right? All of these things that we're talking about. What about for you? Like, what does community, collective care look like around these issues?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a parent, so I don't know, I can't really speak on that, but I know the experience of going through medical trauma, of going through body trauma in a hospital. And I think everything that you said is on point, right? Just like showing up after the fact, not just like I had people come visit me in the hospital, right? But then I also had, people come afterwards and be like, what do you guys need? Can we bring a meal? So doing those things, I think is important. And one thing I want to make sure we also just say is like this makes me think of the school lunch program and how that got started officially as a thing, that got started structurally as a thing because the government saw how the Black Panther Party was providing meals for their community.
And by the way, they're trying to strip that away again. And they are successfully in many places, really certainly breakfast and many lunches as well.
Yeah. And so my point is that there are always pockets of communities that are doing these things for each other. So until it becomes a structural thing, until it becomes like an actual systematized social net across, the county, the state, the country, whatever, like how we support each other inside of our insulated communities matters, right? Because it can become the model for something bigger, right? And even if it doesn't, it's still going to provide that support that we need. So within your community, how can you set that up right now, right? Like, how can you do those things right now? And I just remember being in my 20s and having a lot, because I was in this evangelical community, like there were a lot of young marriages, which meant that there were a lot of early 20-year-olds having babies. And one thing I will say that we did really well within my own evangelical community was community. Like, that's why I'm still friends with so many of the people that I was friends with 20 years ago.
I think that's why so many people join churches to begin with. They're just desperate for community.
Yes,
and they provide that.
Yeah. And we would do meal trains, right? For at least 2 weeks, sometimes a month, right? We would go over and help with, changing diapers and
churches usually run pantries and things like that to help people in need.
Yeah. So how can we take that model? And you don't have to be a part of a religious community to do those things. Like you can still do those things without having that overhead, right? Or that that buy-in into any kind of like religious structure. And so I think it's really important for us to be able to be there for each other, because whether or not this country can ever become democratic socialist, whether or not school lunches will remain in place, whether or not, childcare, Head Start, supports for parents, supports for people who lose people, supports for the elderly will ever become a thing. Like, we still have each other. Like, that's still something. We don't need permission to do that, is my point. We don't need permission to be that for each other.
Absolutely. And I would end it by saying, and expand what your definition of community means. Because unfortunately, what happens is this stuff becomes very insular inside of privileged communities, right?
Yeah.
And then it circulates and stays within those inside of those communities. And then that just only continues the problem. So wherever you can, try to challenge yourself to expand what your community means, who's in your community, how do you do outreach to broaden that community, widen the community, because that stuff matters too. So thank you. This was great. I hope you have a wonderful day. Rest in peace, Hayden. Sorry that but it was a great entree into a conversation that I think is really important. So
I hope her family is finding.
I feel for her daughter, obviously. Got to be the hardest of all of it. So much empathy there, even if they don't want me to have empathy. They can't take it. They'll take my empathy.
They can't take my empathy away.
Exactly. All right. Talk to you later. Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
Taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.